Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
Got an email from my doctor's office telling me my doctor is becoming something called a concierge doctor, meaning there's a $2,300 annual fee just to see her, and I still have to pay for all the appointments. Email said it's a great program. You get a special phone number where you can text your doctor 24 hours a day. A special phone number? You mean the doctor's phone number? I can text her 24 hours a day? Okay. Dear doctor, sorry to bother you at 4 a.m. on your burner phone. But I have a really important question. Can I take a third Advil? I implore you to write back before 5. My head is pounding.
Good morning. It's Thursday, Hockey Thursday, March the 27th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and the Boys of Winter. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now the headlines for Thursday, March the 27th. Dangerous chase of stolen van ends in arrest at Santa Monica Pier. SoCal toddler diagnosed with measles despite vaccination. Potentially faulty DNA test kits used for months by LA sheriffs. Armed robbery suspect fatally shot by police in Walnut Park. Wild chase. Suspect drives on 101 freeway with rear bumper hanging off. Tufts student on visa arrested by immigration authorities. Lawyers want to use Kohlberger's school paper in Idaho murders trial. Burglars in San Marino using chalk marks to target homes, police say. And those are the headlines for Thursday, March the 27th. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Corner.
Jasmine Crocker shit. Keep it going. Let's talk about it. Please keep it up. Keep it up. Please keep up with the stereotypes of an angry black woman. Please keep it up. Democrats, this is the greatest gift y'all could have gave us. You got Crocker shit on one side and Ayo Clueless on the other side. The leadership of the Democrat Party. Keep it going. Come on, strong black woman. I mean, you ignorant as hell. I mean, Democrats got their new minstrel. It used to be Cori Bush. But damn, this is Cori Bush on steroids. Baby, that wig keeps sliding to the left. You might want to pull it up. But keep it going. Keep it going. But I will say this as a black man. Looking at my black mama, she is not the representation of black women. It got the Glorilla of the House of Representatives, the sexy red of the Democrat Party, the Cardi B of Congress. Democrats, keep it up. I mean, my heart goes out to her district, though. The chick already says she's not focused on legislation. So basically, she's not going to do a damn thing for y'all. Basically, you got Congresswoman clickbait. To my man Sheldon down in Dallas, good luck on your campaign. But if you can't defeat this ignorant fool in 2026, I wouldn't be mad either, because this chick is pure comedy. Black women of the hood, claim your crown. Black women used to hate being called angry, stereotyped as ghetto, aggressive. But I guess now y'all embrace it. Whole culture has infiltrated lawmaking. It's now mainstream now. That's your hero. I'm good with it, though. Keep it.
And that was the Political Corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Patriotic Short.
MG42, 10 o'clock, now, fire! Pull it back, Allie, pull it back! What are we going to do, Lieutenant? I'm not sure. They're about to flank us. We got to get out of here! Side to side. Leave me here for the Germans. What? Okay. You nuts? We'll carry you. Highway more than both of you two guys combined. What the hell are you doing? Help us! Come back! How bad? I don't know yet. Thanks! I'm all right. Am I all right? Yeah, you feel all right? Yeah, quit looking at me like that.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, some motivation.
Judge a person not by what they accomplish, but what they had to overcome for their accomplishment. People that are hungry have zero excuses for not pursuing their dreams. And they come back again and again and again. They operate like Willie Jolly, who said that a setback is a setup for a comeback. I've got a saying, if life knocks you down, try and land on your back, because if you could look up, you can get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. I'm training people to get into their greatness, to begin to develop the courage to pursue dreams beyond their comfort zones. Because in order to do something you've never done, you've got to become someone you've never been. When you're pursuing your greatness, you don't know what your limits are, so you act like you don't have any. There's never a shortage of opportunities. It's just a shortage of thinking. Because some things are taught and some things are caught. When I was in the 5th grade, they put me back from the 5th grade into the 4th grade. I failed again in the 8th grade. I have no college training. So being identified and labeled as DT, the dumb twin, it gave me a lot of things to overcome. And so there was no one to dispute what was said about me, and I bought it. Even if you are told a lie, faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. You hear it often enough, it becomes your reality. Perception, not challenge, becomes real for you. Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. So if you can track failure, you can also track success. You have greatness in you. I don't know you, but here's what I know based upon my own experience. You have greatness in you, that you have the ability to do more than you could ever begin to imagine. You have greatness in you. There's a presence in each and every one of us that waits and listens to the voice of the genuine in yourself. It will be perhaps the only God you will ever have or hear. And if you cannot hear it, all of your life will be spent on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. When you recognize your greatness, no one will ever pull your strings. You are different. You were created on purpose with a purpose to manifest that purpose through you. You will never exercise authority and dominion over your life until you exercise authority and dominion over what you are not. Most people go through life living a lie that has been told about them. There's something in you that's greater than your circumstances. There's something in you that's greater than the adversities that you're facing. In life, you're either in a problem, just left one, or headed toward one. You have greatness in you. When you're pursuing your greatness, you live from a place of the willingness to live life courageously, to be willing to take chances, to become a risk taker, to make impact, to go beyond believing to knowing, to lean not unto your own understanding, to feel within yourself there's some cause, there's something that's bigger than me, but I'm never alone in facing this. There's a presence that will never leave me nor forsake me. And that when you step into that place, more of thee, less of me, that there's a place where we can go within ourselves. There are things that we can accomplish, things that we can do, that eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor is it in the heart of mankind what God has in store for us. When we surrender life to me, when you're pursuing your greatness, you find something that you love, that you surrender to that something gives you life, and that you turn yourself over to that and allow yourself to be used by life.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
No blame, just focus. You must stop blaming God and not blame any person. You must completely control your desire and shift your avoidance to what lies within your reasoned choice. You must no longer feel anger, resentment, envy, or regret. Epictetus, Discourses 3.22.13. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for resistance to the brutal apartheid regime in South Africa for 27 years. For 18 of those years, he had a bucket for a toilet, a hard cot in a small cell, and once a year he was allowed a single visitor for 30 minutes. It was vicious treatment meant to isolate and break down the prisoners. And yet, in spite of that, Mandela became a figure of dignity within the prison. Though he was deprived of many things, he still found creative ways to assert his will. As one of his fellow prisoners, Neville Alexander, explained on Frontline, he, Mandela, always made the point, if they say you must run, insist on walking. If they say you must walk fast, insist on walking slowly. That was the whole point. We are going to set the terms. He pretended to jump rope and shadowboxed to stay in shape. He held his head higher than other prisoners, encouraged them when times got tough, and always retained his sense of self-assurance. That self-assurance is yours to claim as well. No matter what happens today, no matter where you find yourself, shift to what lies within your reasoned choices. Ignore as best you can the emotions that pop up, which would be so easy to distract yourself with. Don't get emotional. Get focused.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, The Exorcist.
We're tempted a lot of times is where our weakness is. But demons can do that because they can introduce things into our imagination and they can move our emotions. This is why in the entire history of Catholic theology, in its entire history of spiritual theology, every single saint has warned against following our emotions in our spiritual life. Because, as my assistant says, God's not the only one who broadcasts on that channel. The fact is that demons can manipulate our emotions, and if you're in the habit of following your emotions, then basically you are under their direction. This is why we have to follow reason illuminated by faith.
And that was Father Rippinger. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, capitalism has been called the system of greed, yet it is the system that raised the standard of living of its poorest citizens to heights no collectivist system has ever begun to equal. Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Global Balkanization from the book The Voice of Reason. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of gaslighting.
Are we being gaslit about what gaslighting means? You've probably heard the term before, but it gets misused a lot. According to Merriam-Webster, gaslighting is the psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories. The term comes from a play and movie called Gaslight, in which a man tries to make his wife think she's losing her grip on reality by telling her she's imagining things, like the dimming of the house's gas lights, weird noises, and things going missing, when really he's the one behind all those things happening.
I can see you still, standing there and saying, look at this letter, and staring at nothing.
You had nothing in your hand.
But he said there wasn't any letter. He said I was going out of my mind.
Not
going out of your mind. You're slowly and systematically being driven out of your mind.
But now, from reality shows to internet discourse, gaslighting has become a buzzword often used to describe any kind of lie, manipulation, or even disagreement. And some experts say diluting the meaning of a word can minimize its impact because it can derail nuanced, important conversations and create an idea of an assumed meaning. And it's not just gaslighting. Some experts say other terms, including trauma, toxic, and grooming, have also been taken far out of their psychological context.
And that was a little bit of gaslighting. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now it's time for Stu.
Hey, we'll see you tomorrow. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. We have a lot to go at today. We'll start with tariffs, 25% on any vehicles coming into the country. No exceptions for Canada or Mexico. You build them here, however, no tariff at all. You may have expected the stock market sell-off on that news. I certainly was, but it's not happening. This, at least not so far. The Dow is actually in the green. It's up 20-odd points. The S&P is down a mere 8, and the Nasdaq's down 54 points. That's the state of play for stocks. Bitcoin, 86,700. Interest rates, the 10-year Treasury right now yielding 4.36%, and the 2-year just above the 4% level. You're at 4 even, let's put it like that. All right, politics. An appeals court has blocked the administration's attempt to fly criminal migrants out of the country. The president says, okay, he'll take his case to the Supreme Court. Homeland Security Chief Christian Noem has visited the prison in El Salvador where the deportees will be sent. It is a very tough place. Noem's message is clear. Don't come to America. And if you're there already, get out now, because if ICE gets you, this is where you will end up. We'll show you the video later. It's a tough place. One of the top 3 leaders of the MS-13 gang has been arrested in Virginia. This is a big win for the administration. That guy, he should have self-deported, you know. On the show today, we'll take a closer look at the prison in El Salvador. Prisoners locked down 23 and a half hours a day, just a half hour of indoor exercise. That's it. No blankets, sheets, or mattresses. I'd rather get the death penalty. It's Thursday, March 27th, 2025. Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Stu. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the Crisis of Narration from the Byung-Chul Han Corner. The disenchantment of the world means first and foremost that our relationship to the world is reduced to causality. But causality is only one kind of relationship. The hegemony of causality leads to a poverty in world and experience. A magical world is one in which things enter into relations with each other that are not ruled by causal connections, relations in which things exchange intimacies. Causality is a mechanical and external relation. Magical and poetic relationships to the world rest on a deep sympathy that connects humans and things. In The Disciples at Sais, Novalis says, quote, "Does not the rock become an individual thou when I address it? And what else am I than the river when I gaze with melancholy in its waves, and my thoughts are lost in its course? Whether any one has yet understood the stones or the stars, I know not. But such a one must certainly have been a gifted being." Unquote. For Walter Benjamin, children are the last inhabitants of a magical world. For them, nothing merely exists. Everything is eloquent and meaningful. And that was the Byung-Chul Han Corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Law and Order.
Not just the colleges, it's everywhere. I won't let my kids near network television.
Last week, Stefan watched this mess on PBS about a crazy woman who stabs this guy, spends the rest of the story trying to wash the blood off her hands.
I don't think that's very funny. I mean, some of that crap coming out of Hollywood is dangerous.
And there you go. So what he's doing here is, I call it putting a kick me sign on his back, because he's the character that this gentleman is playing is a detective who happens to be Catholic and conservative. So he doesn't have to wear a kick me sign in order to let people know that he's Catholic and conservative, that he's a good Catholic and a good conservative. In this particular case, instead of making moral judgments on these things, what you can do is make aesthetic or axiological by questioning the taste of these kinds of things. Instead of saying, well, I don't think it's very funny because, it screws up our society, you can say, well, I think that's a show that's in poor taste. You've made your point, and without putting a kick-me sign on your back. Otherwise, if you handle it his way, people get alarmed. They think that you're going to be one of these folks that's going to run to their councilman or their representatives in Congress to try and get their favorite show taken off the air. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to subject yourself to the punishment that will be surely coming. You don't have to put a kick me sign on your back. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
Kristi Noem showed the world the grim reality of El Salvador's terrorism confinement center. It's a prison, a very tough prison. You don't want to be there. And that's the message Kristi Noem delivered. ICE is deporting gang members and sending them straight to what looks like a living hell. Look at it. The prisoners spend 23 and a half hours a day in a crowded cell. They get just a half hour of indoor exercise. That's it. No pillows, no blankets, no mattresses, and they never get out. Noem is telling Tren de Aragua to leave America, self-deport, because if ICE gets you, you'll be in one of those cells. You can be sure these pictures will find their way to all those criminal migrants holding out in America, and they'll be seen by gang members who are thinking of coming to America. Again, the message is clear. Don't come. You don't even think about it. At the moment, the Department of the deportation of gang members to El Salvador is tied up in the courts. And there's an argument about whether the president has the power to fly him out. The president will take that to the Supreme Court. None of this would be necessary if Joe Biden had done his job and protected America from what amounted to an invasion. Over 10 million migrants crossed our border. Biden refused to close it. Democrats consistently turned a blind eye to the gangs which brought in the fentanyl, which killed over 70,000 Americans. And look what happened today. A leader of the gang, MS-13, was arrested in Virginia. A big win for ICE. That guy should have looked at the video from the El Salvador prison and self-deported. But he left it too late. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
And that was My Take from Stuart Varney. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, The Boys of Winter.
Chapter 8. Leading Men. There were just over 13 minutes to play, and the Americans had been able to mount almost no sustained offense. Mishkin had been in the net 27 minutes and seen just 2 shots, and none in the third period. From the left point, Krutov shot the puck diagonally across the ice, and Neil Broughton chased it down along the boards and veered behind the U.S. net, building speed, ready to carry out and try to create something. Krutov bumped with Morrow and then slid over and took a swipe at Broughton with his stick. Keisler blew his whistle, raised his arm. Krutov was sent off for high sticking. He sat down in the penalty box, his youthful face a study in bemused annoyance. The United States had its first power play since the opening minutes of the game. It was a borderline call, and the crowd fired up immediately. Broughton won the draw and got the puck to Christian, who hit Christoph, who carried it in the U.S. zone. The Soviets cleared, but Ramsey carried down the right side and shot it in around the boards, and Christian controlled and fired cross ice to Broughton. Broughton steered the puck to Ramsey, who fired from the point, a low, blistering drive that Mishkin stopped. In front, Eruzione tried to stuff the rebound in traffic, but got sandwiched by Bilyaledinov and Pervukin, the Russian defenseman, and the puck bounced wide. Bilyaledinov shot it out along the left boards, and Vladimir Golikov raced across the U.S. blue line and wound up a typically swift Soviet counterattack. Ramsey fell to the ice and got a piece of Golikov's shot, deflecting it wide. The U.S. defenseman had been blocking shots effectively for 6 games, at no small cost. You should have seen what they looked like. black and blue all over, especially Kenny Morrow, Nagabad said. Broughton carried the puck inside the Russian blue line and couldn't find anyone to pass to, so he backed into the corner and backhanded a pass to Baker along the boards. Baker threaded the puck back to Broughton near the left of the crease, but the Soviet defense converged and knocked it away, and then Christian lost the puck to Petrov. The power play was disjointed, the positioning out of sync, the 2 minutes almost over. Baker, behind his own net, passed to Silk on the left side. Silk carried along the flank and edged toward center as he crossed into the Soviet zone. Valery Vasilyev, the man whose clean, hard check had injured Jack O'Callahan's knee in Madison Square Garden, moved with Silk and went low to body him off the puck, and it worked. Silk started to sprawl to the ice, but didn't give up the play, sliding the puck toward the goal as he fell, toward Mark Johnson, who was stationed in front. Silk was one of those guys who had been on Brooks's bubble for months, a player who heard constantly that he wasn't skilled enough, wasn't fast enough. He worked the door at a Boston rock club called the Paradise when he wasn't beating goaltenders, but nothing prepared him for the drumbeat of criticism he got from Brooks. "Start skating, Silk!" the coach would bark. "I am skating," Silk would think. Silk was among the most diligent weightlifters on the team. There was a sign-up sheet where you were supposed to write down what you'd lifted, but the guys who signed up usually were the ones who came by once a week and wanted to get credit. Silk lifted conscientiously, but never signed. "Hey, how about the weights? They're there for a purpose," Brooks said to him one day. Silk did a slow, silent burn, wondering, what does this guy want from me? Is this how he is trying to motivate me? Or does he just hate me? Dave Silk lost his father when he was 8 years old. The coaches who meant the most to him, people like BU coach Jack Parker, were usually those who became surrogate fathers, men who were strong and kind and present. I wonder if coaches' careers shouldn't be measured by wins and losses as much by the number of weddings and christenings they're invited to, Silk said. In time, he came to appreciate how much Brooks's demands and incessant prodding had helped build both his character and his game, but the coach's harshness and aloofness were difficult to get accustomed to. Compliments from Brooks came around only a little more often than Haley's Comet. "The greatest compliment I can give you is a sweater," the coach said. A few months before Brooks's death, Silk sipped black coffee early one morning in a Boston office building, sunlight streaming through a wall of glass, commuters streaming in from the T station across the street. He has a rugged, handsome face and a sturdy 5'11" physique. Herb didn't have much of a bedside manner, Silk said. He had no bedside manner. He had a decision early on whether to be a doctor or a veterinarian. He chose to be a veterinarian. Silk came to BU from Thayer Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts, and the town of Scituate, Massachusetts, an old seacoast port on Cape Cod Bay between Boston and Plymouth. The town is known for fishing and its historic lighthouse, the 11th oldest in the nation, and for two of the youngest heroines in early American history, Rebecca and Abigail Bates, teenage daughters of lighthouse keeper Simeon Bates and his wife Rachel. During the War of 1812, the girls were on watch at the lighthouse one night while the rest of the family was away. Looking out to sea, they saw rowboats full of British soldiers making their way to shore. With no time to alert others, Rebecca and Abigail grabbed their fife and drum and played as loudly as they could. Believing that the music heralded the approach of the town militia, the British turned around and rowed back to their ship. Dave Silk had his own technique for commanding attention. He scored goals. He had 35 of them in 34 games in his freshman year at BU, 1976-1977, getting named New England's Rookie of the Year, and he had 27 more in the national championship season a year later. His hands were strong, his shot hard, his touch soft. He said once that after graduating college, his goal was to own my own island. That hasn't happened yet, but much else has. Silk played parts of 7 seasons in the NHL, starting with the Rangers and finishing with the Jets, and then played 5 more years in Germany, where he watched the Berlin Wall come down even as his own life was being rebuilt. The man who Dave Silk thought hated him turned out to be one of the great influences on his life. A year before Brooks died, Silk told him so. "It was not a problem at all, Silky," Brooks said. The BU teams Silk was on were talented and combative and hard driving on the ice and hard partying off it. Their regular hangout was the Dugout, a bar near campus where they'd head for the back room and decompress after practices and games. The night the Beanpot tournament was postponed because of the blizzard of 78, a bunch of the guys were in the dugout until dawn. Silk didn't miss any of the rounds, and by the time he got to the pros, his drinking had gotten out of control. Being a strong, young pro athlete lends to feelings of invulnerability by itself. Throw in Olympic glory, and it is heightened that much more. When he was with the Rangers organization, more than a few people were worried about his alcohol consumption. "It was a hard time for me," Silk told a reporter once. "It took me some time to get my head screwed back on straight. I had trouble after the Olympics, and most of those troubles were due to use and abuse of alcohol. I thought I could control it. I didn't know it was something I couldn't control until years later. When he had to confront his problem, he did it with a courage and intensity that didn't surprise people who knew him. He's had to fight a few demons, and he's won," BU coach Jack Parker said. Parker had told Brooks long before the Olympic roster had been set that the sum of Silk's game was so much more than its parts. Silk had a competitive edginess hardwired into him. His grandfather, Hal Janvrin, played 7 years for the Red Sox and was the first high school player to go right from the schoolyard to Fenway Park. His cousin, Mike Milbury, had a solid NHL career with the Bruins and is now general manager of the New York Islanders. He doesn't get around the rink like some of the other guys, but he's so smart, and he's as much a competitor at both ends of the rink as anyone I've ever had, Parker told Brooks. I guarantee that if you have a 1-goal lead and there are 30 seconds left in the game, he's one of the guys you're going to have on the ice. Parker was right. Brooks knew that now. Silk started the Olympics on the 4th line, but he put in the first U.S. goal of the Olympics to get them going against Sweden and found himself playing with Johnson and McClanahan on the 1st line. Now Silk's pass skittered toward the net at the end of an almost completely ineffective American power play. Soviet defenseman Sergei Starikov in front couldn't control it, the puck caroming into his skates, squirting free. Right behind Starikov stood Mark Johnson, who picked it up and shot it right through Mishkin's splaying pads. 3-3. Starikov slammed his stick on the ice. Mishkin stayed frozen for a moment, his legs still split. On the bench, Tikhonov leaned forward and spoke sharply to the players in front of him. The arena shook from the noise. You could feel the tremor at the Woodshed, a restaurant across the street. Brooks thrust both arms overhead, fists clenched. Johnson's first goal had come from nowhere in the final tick of the first period clock. This was even more from nowhere, born not of a harmonious and artistic build-up, but of a bounce, a blade, and a badger, who more than anyone else on the team knew exactly what to do in such a circumstance. Upstairs, in the standing room-only press box, officials from TASS, the Soviet news agency, closed the door to their office and locked it. They were tired of the Scandinavian press coming over to taunt them about how the Americans might win. The din in the building would not let up for the rest of the game. Not even 30 seconds later, Vladimir Petrov got the puck as he was stationed at the red line with an open captain, Mikhailov, skating hard on the other side of the rink. Petrov pivoted and passed wildly ahead of Mikhailov, and an icing call resulted. Another icing call brought the face-off to the right of Mishkin, and Pavlich outdueled Zhluktov and got the puck back to Bill Baker at the left point. Baker flipped it in, and defenseman Bilyadinov controlled it behind his net and swung it along the left boards to Helmut Balderis. He centered to Zhluktov, who found Makarov, whom a tinkering Tikhonov had just switched off his regular line with the brothers Golikov, trying to get something going. Makarov flew down the right wing and rifled a hard wrist shot toward the lower right corner, Craig making a fine save with his left pad. Pavlich, back to help, knocked away the rebound. The Soviets pushed forward again, Balderis sweeping behind the goal, centering a dangerous pass in front that Christian got to before Zhluktov could. 40 seconds were up, and the United States needed a line change. Christian passed to Schneider on the left side, who carried it out of the U.S. zone. Just across the red line, Schneider launched a slap shot on goal and turned for the bench as the puck traced toward the boards. Eruzione hopped on. If overachievement were an Olympic sport, Eruzione would have won the gold. His name is the Italian word for eruption, and that was how he played, with a spirit and energy as hot as lava. He knew when to erupt. His breakaway goal helped launch the rout of the Czechs in the second game of the Olympics, and 2 days later, he knocked in an unassisted goal to awaken the team from its lethargic start against Norway. 6 years earlier, in his senior year at Winthrop High School, he was in the middle of a 3-goals-in-a-minute rally to carry the team to the Massachusetts state title. Eruzione was about 5 feet 6 inches and 145 pounds at the time, but his teammates will tell you a disproportionate amount of the weight was heart. He never shied away from anything, said Eddie Rossi, who was a year ahead of Eruzione at Winthrop before going on to play at Harvard. You could always count on him in the clutch. Said Jack Parker, Eruzione's coach at BU, if you woke him up at 3 a.m. and told him you were going to have a little pickup game at the Boston Skating Club in Brighton, he'd be out there back-checking and forechecking like crazy. Close to 40 years ago, Rossi and Eruzione were pint-sized hockey pioneers in Winthrop, an old seaside town on a jutting piece of land a little east of Boston, bounded on the east by Massachusetts Bay and on the west by Logan Airport and the harbor, a compact place where 20,000 people live in just over 1 square mile. Rows of clapboard and shingled homes wedged together like monopoly houses on lots not much bigger than a penalty box. The Boston skyline rises across the harbor, but feels much farther away. You can walk along the well-worn cement seawall and see the surf hit red rocks at sunrise, then look at the Boston cityscape against an orange-pink sky at sunset. Gentrification has nibbled at some of its soul, but mostly Winthrop still feels like Winthrop. The winter sport of choice in town during Mike Eruzione's childhood was basketball. The town had no more hockey tradition than Albuquerque. There were no youth hockey programs and few rinks, and not even a high school hockey team to root for. Rossi and Eruzione had to head to Revere, the next town up the coast, to have the privilege of playing in a game. When nothing official was happening, they'd play on lakes or flooded tennis courts, inspired by Mike's cousin, Anthony Fusillo, a teacher and football coach at Winthrop High School, and the only person they knew who actually owned a pair of skates. Fusillo lived in the same 3-decker building as Eruzione, a family compound partitioned into apartments, the doors always open, aunts and uncles and cousins forever coming and going, the air thick with the smell of pasta and sauce. They spoke Italian and stuck together, the way many immigrant families stick together. Eruzione is a second-generation American, the son of Eugene Eruzione, whom everyone knows as Jeep, and who worked as a maintenance man in a sewage treatment plant, and as a waiter in Santarpio's Pizzeria in East Boston, right by the Sumner Tunnel. Mike Eruzione spent his summers painting houses and watching planes come and go, and if his collar color has changed from blue to white, not much else has. He could live in much leafier Boston suburbs, but has stayed put on a sloping street not more than 100 yards from Winthrop Golf Club and not even a mile from Winthrop High School, walking distance from the houses he and his wife Donna grew up in. He still goes to his aunt's for dinner on Christmas Eve and still plays hockey at Larson Rink, an aging brick building with a gabled metal roof across from Scott's Auto Repair. The rink has blue cinder block walls, except at the ends, where the colors are a blue and gold checkerboard in honor of the Winthrop High Vikings. On the far wall, there is a big American flag by the refrigeration coils and a collection of championship banners and another banner honoring Eruzione, the 1980 Olympic captain. Just up Pauline Street is the main town square and a stately 19th century town hall, a building with weathered brown bricks and arched windows and monuments honoring the veterans of every war the nation has ever fought, along with a row of miniature flags. There are flags all over town, including the one outside Mike and Donna Eruzione's gray colonial. Winthrop is a very patriotic place. Eruzione is an officer of the Winthrop Youth Hockey Association. His boys, Michael and Paul, came through the program, and his sister, Nettie, is a secretary. Eruzione's roots are as deep as the Atlantic, though they were shaken early in 2004, when Winthrop voters turned down a budget increase that effectively shut down the entire sports program at Winthrop High. "I'm not moving," he told the Boston Globe once. "I live here nice and easy. When I cross the bridge, it's like a gate closes behind me and says, 'I'm home.'" 25 years old in Lake Placid, Eruzione came to the Olympics from Toledo and the International Hockey League with a wide face that made him look older than his years and a skill level that did not compare to that of most of his teammates. Eruzione was a football and baseball star growing up, but he wasn't the most fluid skater and dazzled nobody with his puck handling. He didn't even have a Division I hockey scholarship until the summer after he finished high school. The University of New Hampshire was his first choice, but the school's interest in him was as a football player, not a hockey player. Parker, who had just taken over at BU, was scrambling for players. He had seen Eruzione play before and hadn't been overly impressed, but while refereeing a summer league game, he saw Eruzione, 4 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier, and was starting to become intrigued. "Where are you going to school?" Parker asked him. "I think I'm going to Merrimack," Eruzione replied, referring to a Division II school. "Why not a D1 school?" "Because no D1 school has talked to me." "I'm talking to you right now," said Parker, who offered him a partial scholarship. Eruzione accepted, enrolled in the fall of 1973, 2 years ahead of O'Callaghan and 3 years ahead of Silk and Craig. Eruzione would go on to become BU's all-time leading scorer with 208 points, a fact of absolutely no consequence to Brooks, who was on the verge of cutting Eruzione more than once in the weeks before the Olympics, railing at team doctor George Nagabots, who had pushed Brooks to make him captain. Nagabots had been the Team USA physician at the 1975 Worlds, where the U.S. team went winless, and where Eruzione kept up his spirit and intensity better than anyone else on the team. Brooks didn't know if Eruzione's intangibles were enough to cover up his tangibles. His skating had never been his selling point, and now he was in a terrible scoring slump as well. "Now I'm going to have to cut my captain, and it's all because of you," Brooks told Nagabots. Right before Christmas, Brooks reached out to University of Vermont star Craig Hamola, Pavlich's friend and former teammate from Eveleth, asking if he'd like to join the team. Hamola was given a USA jersey with his name on the back right above number 21, the number Mike Eruzione wore. The implication was clear. You impress us, and the number and the spot on the team are yours. Hamola, however, wasn't eager to bail out on his Vermont team midway through the season or to forfeit the semester he'd almost completed. He also didn't want to be a pawn in one of Brooks's motivational gambits. Hamola wound up declining. Brooks kept searching, and when Eruzione hit his drought, he found a willing pair of freshman forwards, Tim Harrer and Aaron Broughton from the U. Brooks had recruited both of them, and both were players with speed and skill and explosive scoring ability. Brooks's plan was to tell the press that Eruzione had injured his back, then make his erstwhile captain an assistant coach. That way, he could still be in Lake Placid and contribute to the team. When the coach laid out this scenario to Eruzione, the captain was aghast. Making the Olympic team meant everything to him. In the fall, he had fractured his wrist one day in a collision with Eric Strobel, then fainted in the van as trainer Gary Smith drove him to the hospital for x-rays, not so much from the pain of the fracture as from the prospect of it costing him his roster spot. Now he was on the brink again, and for once, this was no Brooksian mind game. In a hotel lobby in St. Paul, before a team dinner in late January, Brooks had a private conversation with Gus Hendrickson, his friend and the coach of Minnesota Duluth. "I'm going to cut Eruzione. He's just not very good," Brooks said. "I think I'm going to go with Tim Harrer." "But Eruzione's your leader. You need a leader," Hendrickson said. "Herbie, don't start screwing things up now." It was exactly the sentiment of the team. They'd been through Brooks's boot camp grind for 6 months. Eruzione had become a widely admired captain, an emotional linchpin. "If he cuts Eruzione, we're not going to go," John Harrington told Hendrickson, his former coach. The players on the team were furious when Harrer and Broughton arrived, even the Gopher guys who knew and liked them. "Great to see you, Tim," Janicek said to Harrer. "When's your flight back?" Not even 3 weeks before opening ceremonies, the team confronted Brooks about his revolving door and had a 4-letter suggestion for him: stop. It wasn't fair to bring in guys so late, to send guys packing who had been making sacrifices for months. Of course, the imports might stand out during their audition. They hadn't spent months getting beaten up by Central Hockey League thugs looking to make a name for themselves by working over an Olympic kid. Led by Eruzione and O'Callahan, the players told Brooks that they were a family and that the team needed to come from the guys in the room right there. Brooks, for once, backed off. The final cuts were Jack Hughes, a defenseman from Harvard, and Ralph Cox, a forward from the University of New Hampshire. Cox had broken an ankle in the summer and struggled to catch up ever since. He was another guy whose skating wasn't what Brooks wanted, but he had a goal-scoring gift that was the equal of anyone on the team. Hughes was a smart, strong player who set a school record for points for a blue liner and had the sturdy disposition to make everyone on the ice better. They were brutal cuts for Brooks. It was impossible not to go back to the way he had felt 20 years before when he heard the same news from his Olympic coach, Jack Riley. A bunch of the players were together in an apartment in Minnesota when Brooks called and spoke to Hughes and Cox. "I can't even imagine what that must have been like," Dave Silk said. Eruzione ultimately survived because of his heart and leadership and his ability to get along with almost everybody. But he sweated it out to the end. He talked to Rossi after the 10-3 game in the Garden, and his angst was deep. He thought he was gone, Rossi said. Eruzione's day job is Director of Athletic Development for Boston University, but mostly he is keeper of the 1980 Flame, a role he fills with a pronounced Boston accent and a natural storyteller's flair. He comes into a room with his brisk, short-legged stride and takes control of it like a traffic cop on Commonwealth Avenue. Mike Eruzione has never seen a hand he wouldn't shake or a speech he wouldn't make. Listening to him is like listening to a guy on the next bar stool. Rossi went with him to Hawaii for one of his first corporate appearances at an IBM sales conference later in 1980. What Eruzione may have lacked in polish and slickness, he more than made up for with his wisecracking sincerity and regular guy demeanor. At the team's induction into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame in the fall of 2003, Eruzione was asked about the honor and said, "I thought we were already in, to be honest with you." Said Rossi, he made people comfortable because he was very comfortable with himself. Years went by, and Eruzione kept expecting his bookings to drop off and the Miracle's legs to give out. They never did. The calls kept coming, and so did the checks. His father used to ask him, "When are you going to get a real job?" The answer is probably never. When the 1980 team was selected to light the Olympic cauldron at the opening of the Salt Lake City Games in 2002, the first time the Winter Games had been back in the United States since Lake Placid, Eruzione did the honors. He took the usual grief from his teammates. "There are 4 billion people watching. Don't drop it," Mark Johnson told him. Eruzione knows better than anyone how improbable it is that a former Toledo gold digger has morphed into America's guest, one of the more sought-after sports celebrity speakers around. He has made a handsome living out of his captaincy, providing inspiration for hire, showing a rare ability to improvise and personalize, and not just make his boilerplate speech, eat his chicken, and be on his way. "Michael's just a natural leader, and it's what got him to the Olympics and got him to where he is today," Mark Wells said. Wells once was at a memorabilia signing with Eruzione in New York. Eruzione had gotten hit in the face with a puck in one of his adult hockey games at Larson Rink and had 2 black eyes. But what really wowed Wells was how Eruzione cranked out his signature as if he were a one-man assembly line. "I've never seen a guy sign autographs so fast in my life," Wells said. "He must have written his name 3,500 times in 6 hours." 50 years old, a quarter century beyond Lake Placid, Mike Eruzione, the captain who was almost cut, travels all over the country talking about his team, his dream, about what happened after he hopped over the boards of the Olympic Fieldhouse midway through the third period against the Russians. "If that's how people want to remember me, that's fine," Eruzione said once. "I have no problem being remembered for one thing. Some people never even have that." With just over 10 minutes left in the game, Harrington dug along the boards for the puck Buzz Schneider had shot in as he ended his shift. It squirted to Pavlich a few feet up toward the blue line. Falling down back to center, Pavlich did a half pivot and flicked the puck in the middle. Eruzione, who had just come on, skated after it and caught up to it. His line mates, Neil Broughton and Steve Kristoff, hadn't even made it on the ice yet. Eruzione moved right. He pulled up. He had room. He let fly with a 25-foot wrist shot off the wrong foot. Vasily Pervukin, number 5 in red, went down to block it. He didn't get it. Mishkin hunched low in the goal. The puck was coming. He didn't get a good look because Pervukin was screening him. The puck was getting closer. Mishkin tried desperately to pick up its flight. Then the puck was on him, flying between his right arm and his body, into the left side of the net. Goal. United States of America 4, Soviet Union 3. Eruzione threw up his arms and ran along the boards, a joyous leg-pumping jig, and the crowd erupted right along with him, even louder. Behind the ABC microphone, Al Michaels said, "Now we have Bedlam." For the entire Olympics, the whole U.S. team had been racing on the ice when the Americans scored. They were not going to start holding back now. Brooks half-coiled his body and again thrust both arms overhead, this time even more emphatically. A tight-lipped smile began to form until he suppressed it. The coach hitched up his plaid pants. He exhaled. The United States had its first lead of the night, its first lead against the Russians in an Olympic game in 20 years. There were exactly 10 minutes to play. The building throbbed. Ken Morrow, a defensive stalwart the whole night, readied for the face-off and the onslaught he knew was coming. These are going to be the longest 10 minutes of my life, he thought.
And that's the latest chapter of The Boys of Winter, the untold story of a coach, a dream, and the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team by Wayne Coffey and read by Kirby Hayborn. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that reality is not fungible.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.